Alright, so in further continuation to our previous lessons, so far we have created the initial parent emitter of this radial energy reaction. Let's start creating the other parts of this also. So we'll need to go to the outliner, select the particles, and go to the end particles again. We'd like to, let's say, emit from the objects. So these would going to be the child particles, and these are very important. I like to take emitter type as the Omni. Okay, let's just put that into reset again. I like to keep that thing as a Omni only, and the rate particles should be, let's say 2000, which is fairly a high number of values. As you may could see that the particles are already being too much inside the scene, and every particle would be emitting the 2000 particles, so that the total sum up will gonna go for approximately 5 millions. Okay, so which is quite a huge particles, but not a problem. We both 2016 is an awesome. It is really meant for some big reactions. So play hard, and let's the speed should be, let's say, although these two attributes won't going to be too much matter, because we'll be keeping the conserve value of the particles, the child particles, to be 0. So I don't think so that these two will be playing a lot of important role. And since we are using the omni, so there isn't any utilization of the directions. It will gonna be in a radial way again. And I think so, without any further ado, we just start creating the reaction. Let me just gonna name that up. Let's say the child underscore burst. Okay, and the emitter also, it should be ch, or let's say c underscore. All right, that is fine, and everything should be fine, I guess. And let's just do one thing under the child burst shape. Let me just gonna put the thing, the point mode, and the point size should be 1. Okay, and now it's time to play the reaction. So now you can see that the particles are now they're getting coming off from the sword, from this point particularly, and they are being getting bursted in a radial way. But this is also not the look and feel which we are expecting. Obviously, as you can see that some of the particles are also coming in this way. This is just because of the random directions, which is a really, really important thing. Otherwise, if you're going to take your camera in this way, you're going to see almost very flat kind of, the burst of the energy. So this is not something very cool. So if in case you're going to go back to the 0 and start playing it, you may could see that there isn't any interest. So one has to work upon that. I guess the value of 5 should be more than enough. And this is where basically, as discussed in the previous lesson, also accountable for the streaks. Okay. So for here at least, we would like to go in this way. And of course, as discussed, we would be providing some aging factor to our particles, otherwise they will become like a god particles. So this is the parent underscore burst, and I am giving the live forever to the random range, and the lifespan random should be 0.5, because I don't want these particles to be carried away throughout the scene. They has to be get ended up. Otherwise, the child particles will consistently keep on emitting. And again, the child burst also would be given with some randomness. Let's say 0.35. Okay, and one more important thing is that while playing the timeline, you should also gonna see that the FPS is still very powerful. You can see the count of the particles inside your Maya, which is approximately 7 millions, which is quite a high, I do acknowledge, but the performance in the viewport 2.0 in Maya 16 is very awesome. Okay, so this is the very important setting. And now moving forward, let's just start creating uh, the fluid container, because after all, it's the fluid that has to take all the credits. The velocity field of the particle will be affected by the fluids only. All right, so again we're going to talk about this in two sections. We're going to first start blocking out the fluids, and then we will be talking about the creation process and other attributes in a separate lessons. So let's just first start creating the fluids. We're going to create a 3D container, and again I'm going to go and select the, oh, we need to switch that up again, the mesh masking, and select this one, go for the line objects. Okay, and this is a little bit a kind of a tricky thing, okay, because I got this thing from after taking 7 to 8 different attempts, because first of all my concept was the energy should get radiate in something like in this way, all right, but in this case I want energy should go in this way, which is in a horizontal fashion. So for that, I need to work upon the container of the fluids, because in this way the y-axis is taken care, but I want in somewhere somehow the fluid to be in this way. All right, I'm going to explain you the reason why. Okay, so first we're going to start blocking out the containers. Let's begin with the size. We're going to leave the resolutions remain to the 10, at least for now. The size for the x-axis would be 150. It's quite a big reaction, so we need to create a bigger container, and the y-axis also should be 150. Now here comes the z. Let's put that thing to the 15 or maybe 20. We may also could wish to increase a little bit more. Let's say 160 should be fine. And here we would like to rotate the container. Okay, now this is very, very important, guys. You need to pay attention over here that we just rotated the fluid container. So in this case the fluids are running in this way, which is basically the y-axis. Now that is something very important. Now you must be getting what I'm saying. Okay, there isn't no more any y in this vertical direction. Towards the z there is the y, which is the natural buoyancy for the fluids. Okay, now start working upon the base resolutions. Let's say we're going to keep that thing to 120 or maybe 150. Okay, and still pretty much light, no problem. And then again we'd like to come back to the display. Let's put that thing to the bounding box. The viscosity is very, very important under the dynamic simulation section. This viscosity is basically responsible for the overall look and feel. Okay, so I must have to say that here the viscosity values would be taking a little bit more higher as compared to the previous one. So we'd like to keep it 0.15. Okay, and again coming back to the dam, we'd like to give it to 0.010. We need to slow them up. The high solve has to be all grids with substeps set that thing to 3, solver quality set that thing to 45 to 50 maybe, and this is a very important attribute, need to keep that up, emit in the substeps. You must have noticed that we're not using the boundary XYZ both the size, because here we don't want to utilize the auto resize, which is a very important factor. Okay, so the auto resize has to be let it be remain 0, and under the density sections, which is the only parameter, I should say, very important section. So the buoyancy has to be, let's say, 10, and the dissipation need to be given a little bit more higher values, because we don't want the energy to remain so that the particles keep on swirling, and also we just want the density to get decreased, or should get dissipate at a fast rate. And the density tension again, like to go with 0.5 and 0.5, with the gradient force a little bit, let's say 15. And here in this case precisely the swirl has to be a little bit more, so like to go for, let's say, 12. Okay, and I also wish to use the turbulence, but I like to keep that thing 0, at least for now. Later we would be experimenting on the turbulence attribute. Okay, so I guess that is sufficient for this lesson. Let's move to the next lesson to talk about regarding more stuff for the fluid container with respect to the particles. All right, so let's move to the next lesson.